with me, please. I know we've been breathing since we got here, but let's breathe together. Take it in. And release. And again. And let go. And one more time. The word inspiration comes from inspire. Inspire, expire, inspire, in spirit. So when we are breathing together, we are inspiring together. So I shared with you last week that I reached out to some friends of mine and asked them to let me know what kind of topics were of interest to them for spiritual conversation. Because it's one thing for me to determine week after week what it is that y'all need to hear and what might be interesting. It's a whole other thing to actually ask people, so what's relevant in your lives? What do you want to talk about? What's up for you? And I got so many great ideas, and I'm going to be rolling them out week after week and month after month because I really got a lot of really great material. But I do also need to tell you that because I like my own ideas too, every once in a while those are going to pop in too. Because, you know, I'm a student of life and I pay attention and I like to find inspiration in different places. So don't worry, you still hear my story, yes? Is that a good thing? Oh, okay. So the topic, one of the topics that came up a number of times in this list of things was the idea of grace. What does grace mean, really? How do we recognize it? And why does it seem to happen for some people more than others? Yeah. Now, I have to admit that grace has not routinely been a word that I use a lot. For me, it has this connotation of traditional Christianity and the guy up in the sky granting blessings to some people and not blessings to other people. Besides, the word grace and the idea of grace previously, it was a little too sweet for me. It was too ethereal. Kind of reminds me of, you know, gossamer angel wings and little girls in tutus being graceful, you know? And I like my spirituality more grounded. I like it juicier. I like it raw and real. So this idea of grace just has not been my word, right? That is until I started teaching the Foundations course, which is our basic Science of Mind course. And I've had a change of heart about the word and the idea of grace. Because we actually spend an entire night talking about grace, talking about what it is, what it isn't, and what I found out after doing this exercise, I've probably taught Foundations 4 or 5 times this new curriculum, it isn't at all ethereal or gossamer or tutu wearing. So I'm sharing, I asked some people to send this to me. We do this in every course. So what this is called a mind map. And we do this in every course. So I draw the word grace in the middle and circle it. And then as a class, we start shouting out different words that grace means to us after we've had a conversation. But if you can see, I don't know if you can see my pointer. Okay, so of course we have peace and we have self-love and release, and we have organic, that's pretty cool. But here we've got the divine discontent, we've got serendipity. I saw some non-sweet ones. Here's protection, accountability, freedom, courage, fulfillment, feeling, kindness, teachers. I like that one. Connected, contentment, guidance. So as you can see from this list, it goes way beyond this idea of, oh, it's so sweet and little angels and that type of a thing. We discovered that the grace is actually, if you look at these words here, grace is actually a causative energy. What I mean by that is that we can learn how to make grace welcome in our lives. And in doing so, then we invite more opportunities for grace to come in. We open ourselves up to it. Is this making sense to you? Yeah. Because the first thing that we need to realize is that that the divine givingness of God, that's what Dr. Holmes calls it, Ernest Holmes, our founder, calls it the divine givingness of God. That divine givingness, that energy of grace is always available. Always available. There is an energy of grace that surrounds us. And I can just, come on, play with me here. Just feel it. Do you just feel it around you? That energy of grace, no matter what we think is going on in our lives, when we close our eyes and feel into it, we can feel that energy of grace. And so all it needs is an opening to come rushing in to our lives. Ramakrishna, who was a Hindu teacher, said, "The winds of God's grace are always blowing. It is for us to raise our sails." The winds of God's grace are always flowing. It is up to us to raise our sails. The challenge is so many of us don't know that, so we keep our sails down. We are literally walking in grace every minute of every single day. It surrounds us. It wants to come to realization when we are open for it to happen. But it has a heck of a time coming in and working in our lives if we have a predominant thoughts that contradict it. So if our general feeling is hate, disagreement, resentment, anger, ain't it awfuls, all that stuff, it's not really providing a space for it to come in. Yes? Are you with me? But the beauty of this is, if there is even the smallest little opening in our consciousness, the smallest little opening in our awareness, the grace of God can find a way in. I'm going to tell you more about that in just a minute. But I wanted to share this quote from Joel Goldsmith. Both of these quotes, by the way, are from the curriculum on grace. It was just such a powerful course. Grace is not something that is given to us or withheld from us. Grace is a state of being which comes into active expression the moment consciousness has been purified, just as the law of gravity comes into operation when an object is dropped. Divine grace is forever present in our consciousness, but it cannot operate, that is, it cannot manifest or express in the presence of fear or hate. Can't get in. So, some of the ways that we purify, and I don't really care for that term, purify, but it works here because he used it. Some of the ways that we purify our thoughts and open the way for grace to come in are, number one, to recognize and know that it's all around us. We agree with that, right? We agree with that. The other thing is to look at all the little things that happen in our lives all the time that represent the grace of God, just like Amy's song. If we walk through life all the time going, oh my gosh, there's the sun, and it goes away, but then it comes back every time. You know the other thing that freaks me out? In a good way, freaks me out in a good way? The stars at night. Do you know that they're up there during the day too? That blew my mind. When somebody said, well, you know they're up there during the day, and I was like, so that type of thing. Start looking for it. Because things happen all the time. Another way to pure our thoughts is to do what we're doing here, coming to the center on Sunday, coming to classes, doing the reading, going to Eckhart Tolle, all these other things that we're doing, to do the work necessary to let go of any thoughts that are opposing God's grace. Yes? And the last one is to be open to His presence, even when it doesn't look like how we think it should. Yes? So I'm going to share with you, I told you I was going to share you a little bit of my story today. This is my personal example that illustrates this point. I'm very open about this, so don't be too shocked. When I was younger, I made really poor choices in my life, my teens and 20s. I abused alcohol and drugs. I got myself into some really risky situations. It was the 70s and 80s, okay? But life could have turned out a lot different for me. But what I know and what I believe now is the fact that it didn't was a matter of grace. Grace happening in my life. So about 6 months before I got sober, I knew I was in trouble. I knew it. I didn't know what to do about it, but I just knew that something needed to change. So I had that conscious thought. One weekend I was working as a cashier in a gas station. Swear to God, with a university degree, I'll have you know. And I wanted to go out and party that night. So I borrowed money from the cash register where I worked, knowing that my boss wouldn't count the till until Monday morning, and this was Friday night, so I had all kinds of time to figure out what to do. I had a wild weekend. Then I woke up Monday morning and I went, oh my goodness, what do I do? What do I do now? So my solution was to go to my sister Peggy and borrow some money to pay the till back. I mean, they had plenty of money. What's the problem? They only a few $100s and everything's cool. Remember when I said that grace doesn't always look like how we think it should? So my sister and her husband said no. They said that I had a problem and that I needed to do something about it. They said that they would consider loaning me the money if I told my parents what was going on and I agreed to do something to clean up my life. Now, unbeknownst to me at the time, their saying no was the first of 2 grace experiences that happened to me that night. I didn't know it, I was pissed. Truthfully, I was. So later that evening, I drove by my parents' house, knowing that they wouldn't be up because it was late, and their lights were on, still in their house. So I went in, and the reason that they were up late was because their water heater had broken, and they were leaving the next day for a trip. They were trying to figure out what to do. So the second grace experience was a water heater breaking at night. So I tearfully told them what was going on with me, and we sat up half the night discussing different options. One knew, one did not know. And that surprised me, that the one knew, my father knew, and the one who didn't know, my mother, didn't know. She said, but Pat, you told me you didn't do those things. I didn't know it at the time, but that was the beginning of a new life for me. So the question is, why did grace visit me twice in one night? A lowly drunk, somebody who was making really lousy choices. The only answer that I have is that for whatever reason, I was just scared enough, I was just sick enough, I was just miserable enough that I surrendered. I surrendered. I let go of my ego, I let go of my defenses, I let go of all my excuses. In some way that I was not even aware of, a tiny little opening allowed grace to find its way in. So I'm reminded of that wonderful lyric by Leonard Cohen, Canadian. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. So the reason I told you this story is not that the grace of God somehow favored me. I don't believe that. I believe it's because I somehow, without knowing it at all, opened up to that energy, opened up to that which is always present and always willing to work in our lives. I opened up to it perhaps by admitting at one point, I think I'm in trouble. I think I need help. So when we hear the phrase, because this also came up in my asking of questions, when we hear the phrase, therefore, but for the grace of God go I, it isn't that God is playing favorites and picking and choosing who to bless or grace. Incidentally, doesn't that woman look like that could have been me? Including the dog. If Lady Clowl didn't visit me nearly as often as Grace does. But that phrase there, but for the grace of God go I. It isn't God playing favorites. It is that somehow, some way, the person who has experienced grace has made it welcome. Recognized it as a gift. Maybe not right away, because, like I said, trust me, I was not thinking that this was a gift when my sister said no to me. But eventually I did see it as a life-changing opportunity. And here, I think, is the key to what I'm talking about today. When grace showed up in my life in such a tangible and real way, I didn't just let it pass by. I did something with it. Are you with me? You understand what I'm saying here? So perhaps those people who have experienced that kind of life-changing grace are the ones who, number one, are open to it, and number two, recognize it, and number two, allowed it to make a change in their lives. Because I know people who are just as deserving as I was who are still struggling with addictions and with sobriety or whatever non-life affirming habits they might have. So it wasn't that God liked me better. Perhaps it was simply that I recognized and I responded to the gift of grace when I received it. In other words, we have a phrase in this teaching called moving our feet. We move our feet. Now, I didn't move my feet in a run towards sobriety and this way of life. As they say in the 12 steps, I trudged my way. I trudged my way. But I kept moving. You with me? Yeah. So I was talking to a friend of mine this week about this topic, and I was going to be talking about grace, and she shared with me that she absolutely loved a particular definition for grace, and that is, grace is undeserved favor. Grace is undeserved favor. In other words, it's a gift or a blessing from the divine that comes unsolicited and without merit. She said it made her feel so loved and so protected to know that grace could come to her at any time, even if she was undeserving or hadn't done anything to bring it in. And you know, I get that. That feeling that the gift of grace could show up at any time is a wonderful, hope-filled way of walking through life. Just always expecting, always thinking that maybe grace will show up for me right now. But there is one thing that I would change about that definition, and that is the idea that it is unmerited or it is undeserved. Because our teaching is that we are part of the all and everything. That we are made of the same stuff. We use the same divine intelligence, the same mind. Therefore, all of us are deserving of good and love and life and plenty and joy and happiness and grace. It is our divine inheritance. Even if, like the prodigal son, we've turned away from it, as soon as we turn right back, it's there for us. Here's how Ernest Holmes describes it. There's nothing in the universe that limits you, or that would or could desire to limit you. There's nothing in the universe that withholds from you, because in doing so, it would withhold from itself. You are some part of its purpose, therefore. The Spirit seeks, urges, pushes against you to fulfill itself. No matter how abundantly the horn of plenty may pour out its universal gifts, there must be a bowl of acceptance, a chalice of expectancy, or the gift cannot be complete. Amen. So in other words, we are all spiritually deserving. Put your hand right here and say, I am deserving. I am deserving. So it is up to us to open up our receptors. I kind of see myself walking through life kind of with my antenna up, right? It's up to us to broaden our receptors, our acceptors, where we are accepting, to recognize, to receive the gift, and then to do what we can do to make use of it. So I want to close with a story, another story, not my story. A true story, though, about grace. In fact, it's the story of amazing grace. And I've shared it before, but it's a beautiful story about the gift of grace and making a difference. So I feel compelled to tell it again. It's the story of the man who wrote the song, Amazing Grace. His name is John Newton. And he was a slave boat captain. His job was to peddle and transport human lives for sale. He was party to unbelievable human suffering. So this was not an upstanding, this was not a deserving person to receive God's grace by any standards. One night, the ship that he was on got hit by a very severe storm and was taking on water, and it was getting ready to sink. And Newton, who had been brought up, I think, as a Puritan Christian, he knew the power of prayer, though. So he prayed during the night. And somehow the storm shifted, and the ship was saved. As a result, John Newton had an epiphany, an awakening that happened as a result of this. And he knew that he could no longer do the horrible work that he was doing. So he left that life, and he became a minister. True story. And he made it his life's work to support the abolitionist movement to end slavery. And as part of his ministry, he co-wrote the song Amazing Grace, recalling the epiphany that came to him that night in the storm. And if we look at the original lyrics of Amazing Grace, we can see how the grace of God absolutely transformed his life. And as a result, not just of the slaves whom he helped subsequently by being an abolitionist, but that song has brought so much hope to others, millions of others. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. We changed the words, it saved and set me free. But when he wrote wretch, he meant it. It saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. Was John Newton undeserving of grace? I can't answer that question. But I do know that when it made its way into his life, he received it, he acted upon it, and he helped to make a difference in the world. And I'll close with this quote from Annie Lamont. I do not at all understand the mystery of grace, only that it meets us where we are, but does not leave us where it found us. And so it is.